Yesterday we got the old engine out of the car and it went off to its new home in a hot rod. We dropped the new engine in with the manifolds on, and obviously they didn't fit at all. It's a pretty narrow engine bay, even though it looks huge. So we discarded those manifolds and we're going to have to make new ones, which is no biggie. I got the engine to sit back against the firewall where I wanted it to be, so now we have to hook up the gearbox, sling all that in, support it on the blocks of wood, as you could see I did yesterday, and then we'll probably tie the gearbox to the car, like make a gearbox mount first, and then we'll go on to making the engine mounts. I'm going to use shackle mounts like we did on the Stagia and a few other cars. In this case, it's just the easiest way to do it, and it reduces engine movement, so everything can be a lot tighter, which will probably help because we're going to have turbos and pipes and stuff everywhere. So let's get stuck into it, eh?
It's another hot and sweaty day up in Queensland, and Mark, the owner of the car, has come over to lend us some muscle. After carefully positioning the engine using some blocks of wood, Al supports the rear of the gearbox so it stays in position and we can safely lift the car up on the hoist.
We've got the engine in position. It's sitting on just a block of wood, as you can see here. So now we need to support the gearbox because there's nothing holding it up. So we'll make the gearbox mount first and then work on the engine mounts after that, because otherwise we've got nothing to sustain the gearbox in position if we finish off today and have to start again tomorrow. It's got to have something to hold it up. So we usually start with the gearbox mount first. Looks like we can use the original gearbox mount. It actually, the original two holes line up with the holes on the Toyota gearbox mount. What we'll do then is just weld a plate across here and pick up the other two mounts, two bolt holes, the studs. And then we're just going to use a piece of 25 by 50 and run through this cross member to extend it out to pick up the original point. The C4 box was very short, so it was obviously up here somewhere before. So we just need to extend that sort of subframe rail a little bit. So here's where we're up to. We've got the engine and box in there. It's sitting really nicely. I'm pretty happy with how well it's fitted in there. The sump and everything is all spot on. I've got heaps of room. It is tight around the strut towers and that, but we knew that was going to happen. So we've made a couple of just temporary transmission mounts just to hold the box into place. In the engine mounting stage, we're going to use these. That's an exploded view of the engine mounts. The trick with this is we've got to have the exhaust manifold, then we've got to have the dump pipe straight underneath it, and then we have the engine mount. So what we're going to have to do is put a mock-up exhaust manifold in there. I'll just like weld the log on, like tack it on so it's in there, bolted up. then have a piece of tube, 3-inch tube underneath it, and then put the engine mount in an appropriate spot where it clears all those things. So normally you just put the engine mount in there and not worry about it, but we have to think ahead here, otherwise we're going to have no room for the exhaust to exit. Having those big strut towers, this is the big problem with having large strut towers, is you end up with a constricted space to get the exhaust out. So just thinking ahead. So we'll stick that in there. The other side doesn't matter because there's nothing has to exit there, so we'll just put the engine mount where it's most suitable, which it'll be just a very short, that goes straight on the body. There'll be something like that, and there's 2 plates on the block, and we'll just weld them together. So we'll cut a profile into that, welder on. It's a pretty simple way of doing it. If you've got a MIG welder and a cut-off wheel, you can do this. These bushes fit into 32 nominal bore thin tube. So you can get it's pipe, so it comes in different thicknesses and it's measured as a nominal size. So it's actually 36mm ID, which is what these bushes are. These bushes are from a 87 Mitsubishi Triton front eye bush on the rear leaf springs. So they're readily available. I just walked straight into the local parts store and just bought them straight off the shelf. They also fit a whole bunch of other Japanese utes, but that's just the part number that I recall. So they slot straight in here, nice and tight. Tube goes through the middle, whole lot goes in there, big bolt through the middle, done. Weld straight to the chassis, so they just stay there. So it's a pretty simple way of doing it. So you notice that I've got left hand, arrow, head. This is really good practice because these flanges, I've often got really specific bolt points, so they might twist a couple of bolts and that sort of thing just to make it so you can't put it on upside down. But it's pretty disheartening when you go to all this trouble and make something and then somewhere along the line you've gone like this and you've welded it all on backwards and you've got to cut it all back off again. So clear markings, test fit to the head, pull it off, don't go anywhere, mark it straight away. That's front, that's up, that's the head side. Then you can go from there. If you get it wrong, it's bloody annoying.
You've done that before, Al?
Yep. Learn from experience, you do. You'll notice I'm using a MIG. Don't panic, it's going to get TIG welded. It's just easier at the moment just to tack it all together with a MIG. It's fast, and all we're doing is making a mock so we can get everything lined up. It's not going to MIG up the manifolds or anything like that. Although you can do that, it's just I prefer to use TIG welding.
After test fitting a mock-up manifold, we can gauge an idea of where the dump pipe will exit and where to position the engine mount.
Shout out to David, he loves this stuff, loves to burn a hole saw.
A tube notcher makes short work of profiling the pipe that we are using for the upright on the engine mount.
So many times we lose a moment of our lives. I don't need anything, but I know I need you now. We've been wasting all our time, but I'm not giving up on time, but I'm not giving up.
just before we weld this one, we've got to do a final check of the level of the engine, because I can slightly adjust the level if it's out by just pushing that mount up and down because of the taper of the V. So just before we do that, we'll just make sure that it is finally level. It should be okay, but it's best to check before you go welding it together.
So many times.
So it's pretty spot on with the level of the car, which is it's very slightly off, but it's been up and down on a hoist, so that's why you got to take a reference off the body and then off the engine. It's the same, so that means it's level, so we can get welding.
All our time, but I'm not giving up, giving up.
Clamping the engine mount to a large piece of boxed steel helps to minimise any warpage while welding. Next episode, we are dealing with super tight tolerances when we make up some exhaust manifolds to fit between the strut towers.